Hello everyone. So I'm sure everybody has seen the video by now of the former Taoiseach Bertie Ahern being asked a few tough questions and been basically put on the spot in a way too. He didn't know it of course at the time that he was being put on the spot, but in fairness, and I want to say fair play to the woman who did record him and stuff, because I don't think Bertie would have said it if it was on camera, because majority of politicians are too afraid to speak up and to say anything. And of course immigration, as you know, is probably the biggest topic in this country along with housing, but of course the two go really hand in hand in a way, because obviously increased demand is leading to the increased prices, and of course the increased amount of people coming here is leading to the increased prices too. That's a factor, and of course there's a lack of housing in general. But long story short, Bertie Ahern, I don't have any time for him, to be genuinely honest. I have no time for him. He's a bit of a crook, to be totally honest. That's my view on him, to be totally honest. But he was right in what he said. But I would say to Bertie, I would say to any politician, and obviously he's a former Taoiseach and stuff, he's not looking for politics now. But if he has something to say, he should say it. As simple as that, out loud, and stop being afraid to say it. And the same with the rest of the politicians. Many politicians now would be terrified to speak to anybody. They're already terrified to speak to people as it is, but they'll be even more terrified now in case they record it. But a lot of politicians are just too afraid to speak up. And immigration is a huge problem. Like, what they just touched on one point that Bertie said about people coming from the Congo. Now, obviously, you know where Ireland is in the middle, like on the outskirts of Europe. If somebody was coming from the Congo seeking asylum or anything, they should be going to Spain or Portugal. Why are they coming all the way to Ireland to seek asylum from the Congo, etc.? And then if you point that, if you say to an Irish person and get a map and ask an Irish person where is the Democratic Republic of the Congo, they would not be able to tell you. The majority of Irish people could not tell you where it is. And the same with many countries that people are coming from Timbuktu, etc. Nobody could point it out in Ireland on a map where they're coming from. But this is the next thing. And he's saying about Muslims, etc., the second generation of Muslims too, he's scared about their generation. And of course, again, this is the thing, I've been saying this for a long time too, that there is of course ethnic divides, etc. And what I mean by that is too, that it's a different society than what you'll say the Middle East type was happening. It's a different society. We live in a Western society, a democracy, etc., religions, and people can be questioned. The Catholic Church is questioned every day of the week. And that's what democracy is. You can question stuff, you can ask questions, and the same, you can question your local politician, your local councillor, whoever. That's the whole identity of democracy. But again, majority, there's questions that you cannot ask, etc., in terms of things. And not even that too. We see this radicalization, etc., of Muslims, etc., across the world too, due to many things. We can go into all the details, but and we see all radical ideas, especially what's happening in the Middle East at the moment. We see a lot of radical ideas coming out of it. It's very frightening, of course. It's very frightening what the world is at the moment. The situation of the world, across the world, it's very frightening. But Bertie Ahern did say that, and I don't think he would have said that. I don't think many politicians would say that. But the other thing about the third thing I suppose I talk about, that he was saying he told Jim O'Callaghan, the Justice Minister, about his concerns about people coming from the Congo and people, Muslims, the second generation Muslims, I suppose the children that are here now growing up, etc. And he raised that to Jim O'Callaghan. Now, Jim O'Callaghan's basically said he doesn't know anything about it. And of course, Micheál Martin and Simon Howes are very upset. The whole Labour Party next, etc. Lefana Patrick's up the wall at the moment, very upset. There's no word about anybody being homeless, Irish people being homeless, but we're very upset over this. But as I say, I don't have any time for Bertie, to be totally honest. I generally don't have any. He's a bit of a crook. He's a bit of a snake too, because you think he would have the guts to say it out, because he's apologising and stuff. At the end of the day, if that's his view, that's his view. Simple as that. He shouldn't apologise for it. It's nothing too radical. It'd be different if he came out and said something really extreme. We should round people up and stuff. That would be a bit maybe extreme if he was like, we should probably do something extreme, then fair enough, understand that, but people would be very upset. But I do think it's what a lot of people are saying, and I hear it a lot. I hear it a lot all the time. That people are saying there's so many people coming in, and they're afraid to say it, but it's the truth. There is so many people coming in, and there's people who don't even know. There's countries that Irish people have never heard of that people are coming in from. As I said, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, there's people coming from Somaliland, etc., Eritrea, etc. There's people coming from Liberia, etc. The majority of Irish people, if I put a map in front of you and said, put out where Liberia is, put out where the Congo is, put out where Ethiopia is, other countries like that, hundreds of thousands of kilometres away from Ireland. We're not just talking about 5 minutes down the road from Ireland. We're talking about thousands and thousands of kilometres away. And of course, they have to come through all of Europe to get to Ireland, because Ireland is literally in the other end of Europe. The furthest away nearly, apart from maybe Finland and Sweden, the Nordic countries, Iceland even. But they probably shouldn't be turning up here. They should be turning up in southern Europe. Because that's because going by the European Convention, etc., you're supposed to seek asylum in the first country you land in. So, say for example, if you come from Liberia, you seek asylum in Italy, or if you land in Greece, you have to seek asylum there. You shouldn't end up in Ireland. It doesn't make any sense. And of course, they're getting planes, etc. They're not walking all the way to Ireland. But I do think it raises some serious issues, because there's a lot of issues around immigration in this country, and it hasn't been addressed, and people have been shouted down as extremist and far right, etc., just for asking basic things, and for just saying that, and it is true, we have to face reality that there is far too many people coming in. There's people coming here that shouldn't be coming here. First of all, they have no right to be here, but they're coming here anyway. It doesn't make any sense, and especially when we see this, there's loads of young men. And it is, majority of cases, you look at any boat landing on the English coast, they're all young men. Like, it's worrying, because they're all under threat, these, etc. And we hear the media saying about women and children. Of course, there's women and children coming, don't get me wrong. Particularly from Ukraine, etc., understandably that. But what they're saying about young children coming, etc., is usually very young men in their 20s that are coming on dinghies, etc., from the United Kingdom. Not so much in Ireland, as I say, but when you look at video and footage of it, people coming in on dinghies is usually young men. And it's the same with people seeking asylum here. There was data released by the Department of Justice last year that the majority were young single men, that they had no families, etc. Now, some did, of course. There is some that has families, etc. But the majority of them from the data last year, it seems like it was people coming on their own, like young men, particularly in their 20s, going into their 30s, coming here. And again, a lot of these people had no identification either. There's just take for example, there was 2 people came from Georgia last year, and it's only gone up to court there. They destroyed their documents and snuck into the country here on a plane. Now, I don't know why they were coming here and what they had to hide, because when you're destroying your documents, you have something to hide, because you wouldn't be doing that if you had nothing to hide. But anyway, do let me know what you think. Because it is, as I say, people have different views, and that's perfectly understandable. That's democracy. That's freedom. That's the good thing about this society, that we are able to discuss these things, that we're able to debate openly and freely debate. And now I know there's a bit of tension and stuff online about it, that people going every way. Like, personally, as I say, Bertie should have spoke up a long time ago. I'm not gonna sit here and say fair play to Bertie and stuff, because he wouldn't say it if the cameras was on him. He knew he was being recorded. But I will say fair play to the woman. She did put him in an awful spot, and a fair play to her, because if we had journalists like that, that would put politicians in their spot, the country would be far better. But anyway, do let me know. As I say, some people would disagree with Bertie, and that's perfectly fine. That's what democracy is. But I think we can all agree that there's huge problems in this country when it comes to migration, and the simple truth. And I think everybody has to understand that bit first. Whatever about action and stuff after that, but we have to understand that there's a lot of people coming here that shouldn't be coming here, and I think we all can agree on that. We see it every day of the week. And they're living off the system, they're living off the state, they're living off the people. And it isn't right. Simple as that, it isn't right, because there's people who have to get up early in the morning to go to work, Irish people that have to go to work, that are struggling to pay the bills, that could be getting evicted, etc., because they can't afford to pay the bills, and in arrears, etc. And it's not fair that people are getting freebies and Irish people that go and work. But anyway, let me know what you think. Subscribe for more, and bye.